Good morning. We are live. Thank you, everybody, for joining today's webinar. We've got a pretty full attendance, good crowd that coming in. Appreciate everybody taking some time out of their morning this morning to join us again here for this next webinar in our series, the ADAS Empowered Community. Go ahead and kick things off here just to kind of keep track on time. And we've got kind of a meaty topic that we want to discuss, and kind of falling in line with what we had talked about in our previous webinar back in January, which was brief conversation on the different topics that we would be talking about in the series of webinars that we'll be hosting throughout the year. This particular topic that we're going to get into today is going to talk a little bit about the technology trends that are shaping 2025 and beyond as far as the future of ADAS goes. So again, welcome to those that are joining the webinar here. Appreciate you guys taking some time, and let's go ahead and we will get kicked off here. Attendees, and I know last time we had a ton of conversation going on, which is awesome to see and really appreciate that. We've got a lot of folks that have got a lot of experience in the ADAS world, and we've got some folks that are just sort of getting their feet wet. About myself, real quick, for those of you that don't know who I am, Joel Adcock. I'm the Director of Partnerships here at REV. I've been in and around the collision industry, ADAS world for the last 14, 15 years. I've spent time on the software side. I've spent time on the shop side writing estimates. I've spent time even on the insurance side. And before REV, I worked for a sublet ADAS programming and diagnostic vendor here in the Midwest. So I will preface it by saying I am by no means an ADAS expert. I am by no means a collision repair or insurance expert, but I simply want to be able to provide a channel here to send a message out to everybody as far as joining together and helping each other out as much as we can as we continue to learn this ever-changing and evolving landscape that we all currently live in. As I mentioned, we have a series of webinars going on throughout the year. If you're connected to the community, which I believe you have to be to join the webinars, there's an events tab that will list the different webinars that we'll be hosting throughout the year. There'll be additional communications that we'll send out as reminders. There's also a list of the different events and trade shows that REV specifically will be attending. And if you're in attendance, be sure to stop by and say hello and go from there. But again, we want to continue to encourage those that are in the community that are asking questions about specific vehicle situations or information that's relevant to the community in terms of ADAS and programming and diagnostics, and any information that you can share from industry periodicals or related information that's going to help us. Again, really appreciate that. We did a contest last month in February where we sent out anybody who submitted a post or made a comment or something got a Yeti on the house from REV. So I think we had close to 30 Yetis go out over the last few days. So again, appreciate those that are highly engaged on the community. If you have any specific questions, you can find me in the community by doing the search and send me your questions, comments, concerns, how we can make it a little bit better. We are continuing to tweak it. I will also say that we got the green light yesterday that we will be, without specifics as far as a timeline, launching a podcast here in the near future as well. So those will be hosted by myself and some others from REV, so that's pretty exciting. And it'll be a various list of different topics and podcast attendees and more information to come on that. So let's dive into our topics today. Just discuss our agenda a little bit. Again, I want to try to keep this interactive. So again, I'm by no means the expert here. I want to try to rely on a lot of folks that maybe have got some experience as we talk about some of these topics today as it relates to AI, machine learning, self-driving vehicles, connected cars, and some of these market conditions that we're coming into. So I'm going to maybe periodically ask a few questions that come in through the chat that I see of interest, or I've got a list of questions here in front of me that I may reference as well. So Again, if anybody would like to participate in those questions, feel free to do so and unmute yourself. And really looking forward to again, making this and future webinars as well a little bit more interactive and not necessarily have me do a lion's share of the talking. So, but again, real quick on our agenda, ADAS is changing. There's no question about that, stating the obvious. How is AI, machine learning, and ADAS technologies continuing to evolve? What does it all mean as far as the building blocks to getting to self-driving cars? What are connected cars? And what are some of the market conditions affecting ADAS right now, currently in the US and in North America, and even a little bit around the globe? So again, stating the very, very obvious for those that are been in the industry for a long time, or you are just getting started out, that ADAS is changing rapidly. We're seeing the evolution of level 0 to level 1 to level 2 to now getting into more level 3 and even into some self-driving types of technology that's available on vehicles today. But before we get too far into that, I wanted to reference this graph here that it's a question that we get quite often. A question I get quite often is, where should we be spending our time as far as learning about ADAS in general? And so it behooved us to kind of put something together that, as it stands right now, our topic today being the future of ADAS technology, but really starting to focus on, or keeping focus on, really our foundational components of level 0, level 1, level 2, and doing ADAS calibrations, continuing to learn how to do proper calibrations, continuing to teach others how to do proper calibrations. Secondarily to that is focusing on physical sensor and camera alignments. Okay, still hearing a lot of indications, or a lot of times where, just as an example, if you're R&Ing a sensor that's mounted on a bracket and you're putting it back on, making sure that the vertical and horizontal alignments are within OEM spec. So we'll come back to this slide, but I wanted to get a visual on this at this particular point, as far as, spending a majority of your time on ADAS calibrations is without question, paramount at this particular point. Spending a good majority of your time continuing to focus on proper sensor and camera alignments, I think is time well spent. But getting into vehicle to everything and telematic services, as far as that technology goes, we're going to talk about software updates and OTAs a little bit today. And obviously the continued evolution into EV and AV vehicles and AI and ADAS repairs, starting to build your, I guess I would call it your repository of information, starting to maybe talk to other peers on what they're doing to prepare for what's really coming down the pike in terms of vehicle technology and these changes that are continuing to happen in front of us as ADAS continues to evolve rapidly. So not to say that it doesn't mean that you continue to not focus on them, right? But really, starting to build that level of information that helps help guide us in the right direction. So, all right. So ADAS technology is evolving rapidly. Again, stating the obvious here. But what are some of the some of the key drivers? Really, AI is it's part of our culture now. I mean, I know I talk to a lot of folks on a daily basis that are using AI on a daily basis, which maybe a few months ago it was a weekly basis. But it's becoming more of our nature to fall into using and leveraging AI software and tools like ChatGPT. I know there's a bunch of other ones out there as well. Some of the other key drivers here are some of the regulations that are coming down in terms of safety. As we know, in 2027, there's some new regulation coming out as far as automatic emergency braking. And that is a key driver as far as continuing to push the ADAS narrative. Consumer preferences. We'll talk a little bit about some of the data around what consumers are requesting or wanting in vehicles as they purchase them, as they relate to safety features. And then also with the EV market, it's cliche, but it's really, it's true that vehicles today are basically computers on wheels. There's no question about that. So Um, I want to just take a real quick pause. And as I mentioned, I want to make this interactive. So I guess my first question to the audience here, and feel free to unmute yourself, is I'd be curious, like, what's your take on, before we get into it, AI's role in ADAS, and do you think that self-driving cars will become mainstream sooner than it's expected, or do we think there's too many barriers at this particular point? I'll just pause here for anybody to unmute themselves and provide any comment or commentary on that. And for those that are looking for the unmute button, it should be the little microphone that's down on the bottom control panel of your screen. Anybody want to take a shot at it? All right. Well, I'll keep moving forward here on it. So AI and machine learning. Again, there's starting to be a lot of connectivity here in terms of the building blocks to getting to self-driving vehicles. The main technology that are pushing ADAS in terms of AI and the machine learning and other technology is really revolving around enhanced object detection and recognition. So really, the vehicle understanding its surroundings, looking at objects, it's looking at pedestrians, it's looking at things around it that are making it familiar with, like, where there may be potential danger or hazard of some sort. And then obviously combining that with mountains of data through predictive analytics for proactive safety. Looking at some of the, there's no, Bart, bear with me 1 second here. It looks like some of you are looking for the microphone. So apologize if there's a technical difficulty here on that. Still learning the platform here as far as some of the nuance goes. But yeah, if you've got a question or a comment, feel free to dump it into the chat window here, and we'll kind of pick those off as we can. With that, Matt, not to put you on the spot here, but Matt Reburn, he's one of our ADAS specialists here at Rev. Reflecting back on my question, Matt, as far as, do you think that AI will become more mainstream in ADAS in terms of sooner or later, or is there, in your opinion, too many barriers at this particular point?
I think the trend is certainly going in that direction. The trend of self-calibrating modules, self-calibrating cameras. The Tesla is certainly going in the right direction of the AI and the automation and things like that. So I certainly think we are aiming in the right direction of continuing with several topics you got here with the sensor fusion and certainly combining a lot of the features in one, and a lot of control with the modules that we have in the vehicles today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing some of the comments come through here on the chat, and it is going to be reflective of, does the infrastructure have the ability to support EVs? Right. Do we have the the ability for the manufacturers to sort of play nice, so to speak, from comment from Chip, which I completely agree with. But it seems as though at this particular point, you think about, like, Tesla's autopilot is a really good example of how it uses AI in its ADAS to engage that autopilot feature, and really at its core, it's using the AI, or excuse me, the ADAS as those initial building blocks, sort of the training wheels or starting point, and then adapting that with sensor fusion, using the machine learning, utilizing predictive analytics, and then the vehicle to everything communication. That communication can go out to not necessarily just car to car, but it could be vehicle to pedestrian, vehicle to traffic signals or road conditions or what have you. And then harnessing all of that information from those first 4 steps into then making real-time driving decisions. So again, as we get into level 4, level 5, that, this is the direction that we're going, and because of the ability to harness the sheer amounts of information and data, using what I've seen in terms of data support and structure, it's terabytes of data, which is a tremendous amount of information. So I want to just take a second here too to talk a little bit about each of these and how they work within ADI, the AI and ADAS connectivity. So sensor fusion is taking and integrating data from your LiDARs, your cameras, your radars, and your ultrasonic sensors. Machine learning is taking algorithms that are continuously improving ADAS accuracy by learning from real-world driving data. Predictive analytics are anticipating pedestrian movement and road hazards. The vehicle to X communication, or vehicle to everything, is enabling vehicles to exchange real-time hazard alerts. And then obviously the real-time decision making is ultimately aggregating all of that information into making a response that can avoid, again, a hazard or potentially an accident of some sort. So I took, and I like to ask questions. I've got a 9-year-old. I'm sure a lot of you have got kids out there, and it's always interesting to ask them certain questions on things that you think they might have a little bit of information on. And I took and asked, not my 9-year-old specifically, but ChatGPT on this, and said, explain to me how AI and ADAS is really sort of the building blocks to self-driving vehicles. And what it came up with is, step one, as we talked about, is ADAS is really the training wheels for self-driving cars. We've got lane keep assist, we've got AEB, we've got adaptive cruise, we've got all this technology right now in level 0, level 1, level 2 that are starting to create those building blocks to get into now taking the AI, or the artificial intelligence, which is essentially the brain, right? It's taking and studying millions of different real world driving scenarios and situations. It's taking technology that's able to recognize objects, people, obstacles, traffic cones, so on and so forth, by using those different cameras and sensors, and then using that information as well to learn from its mistakes, so it essentially can drive better. And then again, taking that information and reacting in real time. And then so adding the AI plus the ADAS essentially then creates what we've got for self-driving vehicles. If it were only that simple, we'd be at that point now as far as level 5 across the board. But as we know, we're nowhere close to that at this particular point, other than a few specific examples. So I'm going to pause again here. I want to take a quick second. Again, a comment out to the community. If the microphones aren't working, again, I do apologize here. But my question is,
feature, Joel. They're only going to be able to interact through the chat.
Gotcha. Totally fine. So I guess my question is, what do we think will be the biggest ADAS advancement in the next 5 years? AI-powered self-driving features, new safety regulations, or will it be something else? Let me just take a second just here for everybody to go ahead and respond in the chat, and we'll see what some of the answers are here. Again, the question being, what do we think will be the biggest ADAS advancement in the next 5 years?
I think we're going to have more and more sensors having the ability to adjust on their own. Like we've got certain brands that have like self-calibrating features, as Dan says. Certainly, I think that is the direction that we're going. There's certain brands like I think Mercedes, Volvo, some of them have either plug and play type of features, or they have some type of no programming or no calibration necessary, kind of just learned on its own as it goes. And I think that's kind of the direction that some of these may be going way down the line.
Yeah, I've heard that quite often too, obviously, as far as the additional sensors, more sensors, more connectivity, more data, more information, obviously potentially going towards that that self-calibration faculty is of interest, I think.
Tom says being able to tell us when calibrations are not completed via lights on the dash. Right now, you can't really tell. I mean, if there's certain, if they are out of, if they're grossly out of spec, I think you definitely get warning lights, and then you get fault codes that say misalignment. But I think having the ability to, I think it'd be a great feature to expose whether, if it's not within perfect condition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as smart as these systems are, you can, unfortunately, you can trick them into an inaccurate calibration. Unfortunately, they don't alert you immediately when something needs to be calibrated. It depends on whether the key was on, the key was off,
Right.
when something got disconnected. It depends on whether the battery gets disconnected in certain repairs like they're supposed to, and then triggers certain warning lights on the dash. There's so many different factors that allow us to have the large misconception that things are working properly on vehicles when they're really not. And that'd be a great feature to have, to either have a greater knowledge within the industry of properly calibrated cars, whether they're working or not, or just the need to do it.
That makes total sense. Yeah, I think that's, things that I've heard of similar to that are, if you're purchasing a used vehicle, just as an example, wanting to know if what systems are on the vehicle and they're calibrated correctly, or similar to emissions testing, to make sure that to pass registration, you've got to now not only pass emissions, but you maybe have to get check to make sure everything is properly aligned as far as sensors and radars, and that there are no fault codes or DTCs potentially. So I think that's it's a great statement. Appreciate you mentioning that. That came from Tom Clinton. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. John's got a question in here that we can certainly address. Thoughts on environmental weather conditions on dynamic calibrations?
Yeah. So
I'll take a stab at it if you want me to.
Yeah, Joel. You bet. Go ahead.
So we've got several brands like General Motors, Ford, have conditions within their learning procedures online. They'll tell you to keep it within a certain miles per hour, certain conditions of guardrails and trees and lines. They'll tell you not to perform it in certain raining conditions, right, or certain weather conditions. They do state that in their ADAS procedures. I don't recommend doing like windshield cameras or things of that nature in those dynamic situations where it's raining heavily, right? Is it going to take a lot longer if it's sprinkling outside? It very well could. Is it going to take a little bit longer if it's a cloudy day? It possibly could. How accurate is that going to be with a little bit of rain? That's a great question. I don't think we'll ever fully know, but the absolute best conditions are typically listed in the repair procedures.
Yep. No, I appreciate it, Matt. Yeah, it's a great question. And John, just to kind of answer that question too, that is something that I think we're going to talk about in our one of our upcoming webinars, I believe in May, as far as trying to get the appropriate environment, which it's not necessarily always easy to do. I mean, there's always conversation around what's the perfect environment to do static calibration, but obviously dynamic calibrations being certainly part of the equation on some vehicles. And again, living here in the Midwest, trying to do an eyesight calibration after it's snowed is null and void. It's not going to happen if there's snow on the road, because the car can't see, or the camera can't see the lines. So that's something that we will definitely broach in upcoming webinars, and it could be a great question to put out to the community as well and see what kind of response you get. So again, appreciate it. If we see some additional other comments and questions coming in, really appreciate everybody. Certainly helps us understand level of detail and value here as far as the information that we're providing. So we'll go ahead and continue on here, and we'll surface back to some questions here in the chat in just a few minutes. But I wanted to talk a little bit about ADAS, EVs, and self-driving vehicles. What are obviously it's a certain level of challenge and certain level of opportunity in terms of EVs and AVs being autonomous vehicles. There are probably some of you out there that are seeing a good mix of EV vehicles on a daily or weekly basis, and potentially there are some of you out there that it's few and far between. So, on one end, being able to have exposure to EV vehicles on a more frequent basis is certainly opportunity, but it can certainly present challenges itself. And on the other end of that, if you're not seeing them all that frequently, well, maybe that's the opportunity and not having to necessarily deal with those challenges. So they certainly do require some unique calibration procedures for their ADAS components. And as we've talked about, and as this webinar is really focused on, is how AI and ADAS are working together for autonomous vehicles through that sensor fusion, predictive analytics, machine learning, and so forth, to build that foundation for fully autonomous vehicles going forward, which, again, depending on which side you look at this, can be either a challenge and or an opportunity. The integration with autonomous driving, ADAS is really that stepping stone, like we've talked about at this particular point, to get to beyond level 3 technology. Level 3 is sort of that semi-autonomous, and if we think of specific vehicles right now, like Ford with their Blue Cruise or GM with Super Cruise, to continue to evolve down that path, which I think is really inevitable at this point, to get to fully autonomous level 4, level 5, will be the continued evolution and integration of AI and data into the current technology that exists in terms of ADAS. So any particular questions that anybody wants to throw up in the chat here regarding maybe their experience in working with different types of calibration procedures on EV vehicles? Take just a second here. And again, apologize for the technical issue and not being able to unmute. We'll take this back as feedback so we can make sure we're prepared for next time. All right. I see a few folks typing some messages in here, but we'll go ahead and, as those questions get popped up and thoughts get uploaded into the chat here. Really quick. Oh, there we go. These from Dan. We got Blue Cruise, Super Cruise. Will this lead to all calibrations to OEM shops for liability? That's a good question, I guess. So the question from Dan is, with Blue Cruise, Super Cruise, will this lead all calibrations to OEM shops for liability? Man, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
I don't know that it necessarily needs to go to OEM dealers or OEM certified shops for those calibrations. Super Cruise is obviously the General Motors, and Blue Cruise is with Ford. I don't see that being a need. Like, as long as we're utilizing the proper conditions of how to calibrate something, if we are using the proper equipment, certainly some of these calibrations may start requiring an initialization or configuration of some sort that's going to require the OEM scan tool to perform certain calibrations, maybe. But as long as if the aftermarket world can keep up with the ability to still perform these calibrations, then I mean, maybe things can change a little bit in that regard, but a lot of OEM softwares have the ability for you to purchase them for a 3-day period or a 1 week or 1 month, a lot cheaper than purchasing the full software. Like it is, you do have the abilities to download these softwares at a cheaper cost, especially if you've got a Cardac or a an Altel Ultra, that giant VCI that Altel offers. That is pretty universal for. I've used it on Honda. I've used it on Ford. I've used it on a few different brands. It kind of acts like a universal VCI.
That's good. That's a good response. Appreciate it, Matt. And again, Dan, that's maybe a great question to throw out in the community and see what kind of response you get. I think based on some of the responses that we see here, obviously there are a few folks that subscribe to the OEM methodology as far as equipment goes, which you can't go wrong with OEM. There are certainly some great alternatives out there, like Matt mentioned, using some different aftermarket or third party platforms can certainly help shorten that distance to be able to do those specific calibrations on Ford's Blue Cruise or GM's Super Cruise. So great questions, and again, appreciate some of the responses here from the group. All right, so what's the link between ADAS and self-driving cars? I think it's really no mystery at this particular point that they start with ADAS features. The AI brain, as we talked about, helps them learn. AI-powered ADAS systems create that 3D driving map and surroundings. And what does now the technology help in terms of EVs drive longer and drive smarter? So with that AI technology built in, it can allow the vehicle to adjust speeds, brake more efficiently, regenerative braking to help recharge the battery, and obviously from a route planning standpoint, not having to do as much start and stop procedures in terms of traffic. You can maybe be rerouted on a less congested road or highway for that matter. So I guess a question I want to throw out here real quick as we talk about some of the industry and consumer data on EVs and AVs. We can review this data here. Again, I want to make mention too that this presentation will be available out on the community as well as the recording of this. So feel free to reference back to this at any time, or feel free to share this with anybody on your team. But I want to ask a question out to the group here. So with consumers in mind, they're demanding more ADAS safety features, but not of them, obviously they don't understand what they don't know. How do we think we can, as an industry, bridge that gap in terms of them not knowing what the technology actually does, even though they're demanding all these ADAS and safety features? So we'll pause here for just a second and see what kind of responses we get here. But I can tell you that from some of the research that I've done and that we've done, that consumer demand as they buy a new vehicle, it's roughly 85% are demanding ADAS systems and technology beyond that car, which is pretty substantial. But not knowing how it works, not knowing how it gets recalibrated, how do we bridge that gap so that we can make sure we're relaying that information that's important to them as it relates to the safety of their vehicle? So see, we got a few folks typing some answers here, so we'll hold just a second to see what those responses are. And while those responses are coming up, we're going to shift gears here a little bit and get into talking about connected vehicles. Matt, do you have any thoughts as far as like how we bridge that gap on educating consumers? I know it's a meaty topic as well, but in and of itself.
It is. Um, I've been kind of bouncing around here, so I've kind of lost sight of the question of the exactly the topic here. Bridging the gap on. Let's see, I've got the deck pulled up here.
Yeah,
Uh,
mainly it's just like how do we bridge that gap on consumer knowledge, as far as them demanding ADAS systems yet, um, not understanding exactly how it all works. See a few responses here from Matt Taylor. We've got uh, Matt says it's a hard answer. The biggest problem we run into is when we tell someone they need calibrations after repair, they'll go to another shop who either doesn't know or doesn't care and will do the repairs without it. I believe that happens all far too often, which is unfortunate that there are folks out there that are trying to do what's right by the vehicle and the vehicle owners, and then they're trying to get a second opinion, and not understanding the potential consequences of not paying attention to the ADAS systems on vehicles. Dan mentions that many cash paying customers do not want to pay for ADAS work needing to be done post windshield alignment or front end repair. Liability release may not cover us. I have to agree with that, as more general repair or mechanical repair shops are now investigating getting into the ADAS arena, so to speak, by buying equipment. That's all too often. The big question is, there's technology out there to identify when calibrations need to be done after alignment, but how do we quote unquote sell this to the customer? It's certainly no easy task at this particular point. As we all know, on the collision side, it's a little bit easier when the insurance company is typically picking up, the reimbursement on the work that we're doing. So let's see what else we've got here. From Rob, we've got insurance is what pushing ADAS development and implementation. They want to reduce the number of collisions. Most customers turn off their ADAS systems, of which is leading the manufacturers to remove the option of disabling the system. We've been trying to train our customers on requirements, but their only focus is to keep the insurance company happy. It's interesting, Rob, on that is we'll talk briefly on this, but the advent of the you mentioned like consumers turning on and off their ADAS functionality, typically from like the head unit within their vehicle. The other part of that comes into the equation is, and we mentioned this, or I asked this question out on the community a few days ago, was the OEM subscriptions as far as ADAS being able to be turned on or turned off. And will we continue to see a prevalence of that from being an option from the OEMs? Do vehicle owners want to turn on or turn off certain ADAS functionality? Or with the advent of OTAs, as we'll talk a little bit here, not every sensor on a car is necessarily live as it leaves the production floor. I had a conversation with a gentleman that worked at Lucid for a period of time, and he was saying that on their Lucid Air, when it's moved off the production floor and out into the dealership or to be sold, that it's outfitted with 20 or 25 different ADAS sensors on the car, but only 6 or maybe 7 are live on the vehicle, and that by virtue of just pushing through an over-the-air update, those other sensors may now be live. So is that something that the consumers want? Is that something the consumers are demanding? Again, I think, based on the responses that we're seeing here, this is another very meaty topic that we could take back and do a whole other webinar series on collectively. So, and again, I appreciate everybody taking a few minutes here to share your responses. I'll let you know that we are trying to collect these, from the chat as much as we can. If we're not able to answer them specifically, as part of the webinar, we'll do our best to get responses back out to everybody individually here post webinar. If we don't, for some reason, again, feel free to reach out directly to us within the community, and or ask your question on the community, and get some responses there for you. So, So connected vehicles, I know I kind of skipped over a couple of slides here, but as we talk about the connected cars and the ADAS evolution, really how do connected cars work? It's 5G, it's Wi-Fi, it's GPS, it's maps, it's cameras, it's sensors, it's AI, it's the vehicle to everything communication. It's not just vehicle to vehicle, but it's as we talked about before, it's the telematics of vehicle to everything, being traffic signals, pedestrians themselves, objects on the road, other traffic patterns, and things like that. So really, that's the baseline of like how these connected cars can work. And what can, as a few examples, what can connected cars do? They can certainly find or help find the fastest route to avoid congestion or traffic jams. You can certainly use them for voice control to turn up your radio, turn it down, call your spouse, text your kids, turn the car on, turn the car off with remote control. It can certainly signal out for emergency help. I think one of the early versions of this was GM's OnStar. And then obviously there's self-driving functionality and features that are part of connected cars as well. So Chip posted in here that Tesla has OTAs removed from front radars out of the car. The parking sensors, you have to switch to say use sensors or cameras on the vehicle and still have sensors, and that's before vehicles or Tesla's pre-2023. So Chip, appreciate the comment there. How do we feel about, if you think about like your business or your shop, if you're a shop owner or a production manager, or you're an ADAS technician, or you're working for a sublet vendor, how do you feel as far as being prepared for the increasing demand in ADAS calibrations? What do you think are some of the best tools and training that help you the most? Again, posing this question out to the audience here for a response. I'll take a quick, brief second just to pause and let you guys type some responses in here. And again, the question being is, how prepared do you feel your business is for the increasing demand for ADAS calibrations? And what tools or training do you think help the most, or do you rely on? See a few of you typing some responses in here. With that, we'll go ahead and move forward. We talked about OTA updates. Again, just reading what we've got here on the screen, that OTA or over-the-air updates allow automakers, the manufacturers, to remotely upgrade ADAS features without needing a dealership visit. Vehicles connected via Wi-Fi at a home base, and the manufacturer can push out the update as far as a patch or new version, or even activate currently unactivated or deactivated sensors on a car. And those updates can enhance adaptive cruise control, emergency braking, self-parking features, so on and so forth. So again, I think you'll see continued advancement on OTAs, and again, mitigate the need to have to go to a dealership for any sort of updates as far as some of the software that's loaded on cars today. All right. So overall, like, how does this impact ADAS? Again, if we think about connected cars, we think about AI, we think about machine learning, we think about all of the different analytics that go into this. Really it boils down to a couple of key pieces are faster reaction times, safer navigation, and essentially smarter driving. I don't know if it's necessarily, I've heard that shops are slower this year or slower this winter. And I don't know if it's necessarily, I live here in the Midwest. It's been a pretty mild winter for the most part. I don't know if it's just coincidence that maybe shops are a little bit slower. Maybe in your area, shops are as busy as ever. But again, just sort of a general sentiment that I've heard that shops aren't as busy, meaning collision shops. So I'm curious that, or if we think collectively that there is by virtue of some of the ADAS technology that's out there. And obviously it's preventing accidents. Let's, we'll call a spade here on what it is, but there's still distracted driving. There's still people that drive too fast. There's still certain variations or things that still, cause accidents. But do we feel that there's been such a huge impact on the industry because of what ADAS has sort of brought to the table in the last few years? See a few comments coming in here as far as slow in San Diego. John Butler, yeah, I know it's slow in Minnesota. Matt Taylor having a record start to the year. That's awesome to hear, man. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious what some thoughts are as far as, do we think that the technology has come to a certain point where it's, obviously we're seeing safer vehicles, we're seeing less accidents, but is it having an overall impact negatively on the amount of volume that we're seeing at our shops on a day-to-day basis? I'll pause here just for a second. Let me catch my breath.
Looks like Jimmy has a comment here of,
yeah,
would love to have more ability to access calibration instructions more readily available for technicians, knowing what kind of targets or equipment we may need for the calibrations. I will say for Rev, I know we try to put as much information in regards to the exact instructions and equipment needed for that calibration. Certainly, it would be outside of Rev. There should be a better source to determine what kind of equipment you need for those type of things. I agree.
Awesome. Yeah, Dan, I like your comment. I agree. It's a little bit easier to text and drive. Not ideal, but yeah, when your ADAS systems are on, we'll leave that for ourselves, I think, but not to entitle or enable anybody as far as doing that. But
that's what you use voice commands for.
That's right. The connected cars. So, all right, we've got about 10 minutes left here. I've got a few more slides that I want to kind of get through. And again, I really appreciate everybody's participation as far as the comments and questions here in the chat. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulty on the microphone situation. We'll get that figured out for next time. But got a comment real quick here from Bob. It says, I read an article that many of the ADAS features are indeed minimizing the amount of collision. However, the adaptive cruise has actually gone the other way and is causing more accidents. No solid info on it, but it is interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious to know more about that as well. Maybe that's a great question, Bob, to put out in the community in one of the channels to see what kind of response you get, or if that's something that other people are seeing or have heard of, or can reference any specific information on.
I think that's a great awareness to say a lot of front radars are not getting calibrated when they should, or a lot of them are misaligned, which is a scary thing to think of on the road. How many people are utilizing those features and like to use those features, but don't know the limitations or don't know whether their system that they're using is actually accurate, right? So whether they've had a minor fender bender or they've had a collision repair on those vehicles in some sort. That is very interesting.
That would be really key to know, is of the folks that have had an accident as a result of, I guess I'd call it faulty adaptive cruise systems. Was that post collision repair? Did they purchase the vehicle potentially, in a used capacity? Yeah, I'd love to figure out more of that. I think there's some objectively some information that could be behind that, could be really, really powerful. So appreciate you bringing that up, Bob. All right. So last topic that we want to kind of talk about, and again, folks, I really appreciate you guys being on here for the last 50 minutes, hanging out with us. Again, this is this topic that we're talking about today. We could probably spend an entire week on going down different rabbit holes. So again, just really want to kind of be able to provide some information, looking out into the eventual horizon here, as far as again the continued advent of AI and the EV markets, and how ADAS is continuing to rapidly expand. So market trends around here and around the globe. The U.S. by far and away leads, in terms of vehicle sales with ADAS equipped vehicles. The overall market size in terms of ADAS in last year alone, we need to get some updated data on this particular slide, is $15 billion. A lot of manufacturers, not just Tesla, GM, and Ford, they're all relatively investing a lot of finances and investments into AI-driven ADAS vehicles. Around the globe, by 2030, this is a $95 billion market. I know I've talked to a few folks that have emerged into the UK and Euro market, trying to do calibrations, and they're indicating that they're roughly 4, 5, 6 years behind the US in terms of having the ability to operationalize their business in the European market. Continuing to see the increase in terms of government curiosity, I guess, as far as regulations go, not only here in North America but across the globe as well. Key market drivers and challenges. Again, there's the mandates coming down in 2027 for AEB here in the U.S. You can see some of the additional requirements coming around the world as well in terms of the Euro and China markets. The rise of AI and machine learning and ADAS, like Tesla, Waymo, and Mobileye are just a few examples of really investing heavily in AI and ADAS technology to continue to drive that autonomous vehicle narrative forward. Consumer preferences, like we talked about earlier, about 85% of consumers are demanding or prioritizing ADAS safety features when they buy a vehicle. What do they like? They love their adaptive cruise controls. They love their blind spots. They love their lane keep assists, and their collision mitigation. And that'll continue to evolve. I think what we need to do as the industry is continue to figure out ways to continue that narrative and that educational piece with them, as we continue to learn and educate ourselves and continue to proliferate information amongst ourselves that gets down into consumers, so that they can digest it in a way that is easy for them to understand, that lack of calibration or miscalibration or failed calibration, not to scare them or put fear in them, but by any stretch, but certainly let them know and be aware that, hey, by virtue of declining this calibration, it could leave them in a precarious situation as they drive their car. So what's next for ADAS? Lots of things. There's full ADAS integration into EVs and AVs. AI enhanced driver monitoring systems. There's ADAS for urban mobility and for smart cities, and really the mass adoption for affordable ADAS for all vehicle manufacturers, not necessarily for our premium line cars that are out there. Gary put in a comment real quick here, excuse me. For consumers, vehicle owners will need to understand ADAS will be a periodic maintenance, like wheel alignments and service, based on mileage for vehicle conditions. Gary, I agree with that. I think there will be a time where it's just second nature that we need to be able to provide calibration services to consumers for certain services that maybe are sort of the standard quo as far as repairs go today, whether it's putting on new tires or an alignment or minor suspension work or what have you going forward. So All right, and coming back to this again, I wanted to showcase this uh, as we get towards the end of the presentation here, and again, just to reflect back on where we should be focusing our time. Um, Again, really focusing on ADAS calibrations, making sure we're using information that's readily available to us, whether through its ADAS scrubbers or OEM service information, or talking to our peer groups, or talking to industry leaders as far as making sure we're doing what's right by the vehicle as it relates to ADAS. Again, focusing on secondarily those sensor and camera alignments with proper um, vertical and horizontal alignments, and obviously starting to build our repository of information as leaders in the industry as it relates to what we talked about today as being the topic with AI, connected cars, and vehicle technology as it continues to advance. So we got about 3 minutes. We made it. I appreciate it. I want to take one last couple slides here to talk about our next set of webinars that we've got coming up. We don't have one listed here for next month in April, but we will be hosting a panel that I'll be monitoring or with 4 individuals from the ADAS and collision industry that will be talking about different topics as it relates to several different things. So I'll be watching for updates on that. I think that's April 24th. Don't quote me on the actual date, but that is listed out on the events page. In May, our next webinar that we'll be doing additionally will be best practices and common pitfalls. Again, these should be listed out on the events page on the community. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And last, again, real quick, we get a lot of questions about what Rev does. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself and or to Matt, who's an ADAS specialist on the Rev team. Really appreciate you guys taking some time with us this morning. I will stick around here to answer any other questions that may come up through the chat. If you've got anything and have any questions or comments, feel free to stick around. But with that, again, appreciate everybody's participation today. Had a great audience, and really appreciate you guys taking some time out of your days to spend a Friday morning with us. So with that, we'll let you guys get back to your days. But otherwise, if you want to hang out and chat on the chat here with us, feel free to do so. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you.